with my headphones on, then going, oh, I'm not wearing my headphones, and then putting them on. But, you know, planning. This is a professional operation. Um, my back's really bad again today. Tomorrow is the day for my appointment. I go at 10:30 in the morning. Well, I leave at 8, but I gotta be there for 10:30, and yay! So hopefully everything goes well, and I don't know if you can see me. I'm all my heating pads on. Helps helps the helps the back a bit. I'm sitting funny. I just realized, but yeah. So I'm just gonna do up the whatchamacallit, Voltaire chapters, Candide by Voltaire, chapters 15 to 18. It's around 30 minutes, maybe 40. But yeah, so I'm gonna do up some typing because I need to get some typing done, and that's it. I'm just doing up some descriptions of my stuff so that I can put it on Etsy when I'm ready. I've got some pictures taken already, and yeah, so we'll let that be what it is. Hope you enjoy, and we'll see you in a bit. I know there's lots of people over on my friend's channel right now, so I'm guessing there won't be many people here, but that's okay. You know, it is what it is. Okay, see you guys in a bit. Let's see.
This is a LibriVox recording. Candide by Voltaire. Chapter 15. How Candide Killed the Brother of His Dear Cunegonde. I shall have ever present to my memory the dreadful day on which I saw my father and mother killed and my sister ravished. When the Bulgarians retired, my dear sister could not be found. But my mother, my father, and myself, with 2 maidservants and 3 little boys, all of whom had been slain, were put in a hearse, to be conveyed for interment to a chapel belonging to the Jesuit, within 2 leagues of our family seat. A Jesuit sprinkled us with some holy water. It was horribly salt. A few drops of it fell into my eyes. The father perceived that my eyelids stirred a little. He put his hand upon my heart and felt it beat. I received assistance, and at the end of 3 weeks I recovered. You know, my dear Candide, I was very pretty, but I grew much prettier, and the Reverend Father Didier, superior of that house, conceived the tenderest friendship for me. He gave me the habit of the order some years after I was sent to Rome. The Father General needed new levies of young German Jesuits. The sovereigns of Paraguay admit as few Spanish Jesuits as possible. They prefer those of other nations as being more subordinate to their commands. I was judged fit by the Reverend Father General to go and work in this vineyard. We set out, a Pole, a Tyrolese, and myself. Upon my arrival, I was honored with a subdeaconship and a lieutenancy. I am today colonel and priest. We shall give a warm reception to the King of Spain's troops. I will answer for it that they shall be excommunicated and well beaten. Providence sends you here to assist us. But is it indeed true that my dear sister Cunegonde is in the neighborhood with the governor of Buenos Aires? Candide assured him on oath that nothing was more true, and their tears began afresh. The Baron could not refrain from embracing Candide. He called him his brother, his savior. "Ah, perhaps," said he, "we shall together, my dear Candide, enter the town as conquerors, and recover my sister Cunegonde." "That is all I want," said Candide, "for I intend to marry her, and I still hope to do so." "You insolent!" replied the Baron. "Would you have the impudence to marry my sister, who has 72 quarterings? I find thou hast the most consummate effrontery to dare to mention so presumptuous a design." Candide, petrified at this speech, made answer: "Reverend father, all the quarterings in the world signify nothing. I rescued your sister from the arms of a Jew and of an inquisitor. She has great obligations to me. She wishes to marry me. Master Pangloss always told me that all men are equal, and certainly I will marry her." "We shall see that, thou scoundrel!" said the Jesuit Baron de Thunder Ten Tronckh, and that instant struck him across the face with the flat of his sword. Candide in an instant drew his rapier and plunged it up to the hilt in the Jesuit's belly, but in pulling it out reeking hot, he burst into tears. "Good God!" said he, "I have killed my old master, my friend, my brother-in-law. I am the best natured creature in the world, and yet I have already killed 3 men, and of these 3, 2 were priests." Cacambo, who stood sentry by the door of the arbor, ran to him. "We have nothing more for it than to sell our lives as dearly as we can," said his master to him. "Without doubt some one will soon enter the arbor, and we must die sword in hand." Cacambo, who had been in a great many scrapes in his lifetime, did not lose his head. He took the Baron's Jesuit habit, put it on Candide, gave him the square cap, and made him mount on horseback. All this was done in the twinkling of an eye. "Let us gallop fast, master. Everybody will take you for a Jesuit going to give directions to your men, and we shall have passed the frontiers before they will be able to overtake us." He flew as he spoke these words, crying aloud in Spanish, make way for the Reverend Father Colonel." End chapter 15. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Candide by Voltaire. Read by Ted DeLorme in Fort Mill, South Carolina, during January 2007. This is a LibriVox recording. Candide by Voltaire. Chapter 16. Adventures of the 2 Travelers, with 2 girls, 2 monkeys, and the savages called Oreillons. Candide and his valet had got beyond the barrier before it was known in the camp that the German Jesuit was dead. The wary Cacambo had taken care to fill his wallet with bread, chocolate, bacon, fruit, and a few bottles of wine. With their Andalusian horses they penetrated into an unknown country, where they perceived no beaten track. At length they came to a beautiful meadow intersected with purling rills. Here our 2 adventurers fed their horses. Cacambo proposed to his master to take some food, and he set him an example. "How can you ask me to eat ham," said Candide, "after killing the Baron's son, and being doomed never more to see the beautiful Cunegonde? What will it avail me to spin out my wretched days, and drag them far from her in remorse and despair? And what will the Journal of Trevoux say?" While he was thus lamenting his fate, he went on eating. The sun went down. The 2 wanderers heard some little cries, which seemed to be uttered by women. They did not know whether they were cries of pain or joy, but they started up precipitately with that inquietude and alarm which every little thing inspires in an unknown country. The noise was made by 2 naked girls, who tripped along the mead, while 2 monkeys were pursuing them and biting their buttocks. Candide was moved with pity. He had learned to fire a gun in the Bulgarian service, and he was so clever at it that he could hit a filbert in a hedge without touching a leaf of the tree. He took up his double-barreled Spanish fusil, let it off, and killed the 2 monkeys. "God be praised, my dear Cacambo! I have rescued those two poor creatures from a most perilous situation. If I have committed a sin in killing an inquisitor and a Jesuit, I have made ample amends by saving the lives of these girls. Perhaps they are young ladies of family, and this adventure may procure us great advantages in this country." He was continuing, but stopped short when he saw the two girls tenderly embracing the monkeys, bathing their bodies in tears, and rending the air with the most dismal lamentations. "Little did I expect to see such good nature," said he at length to Cacambo, who made answer, "Master, you have done a fine thing now. You have slain the sweethearts of those two young ladies." "The sweethearts? Is it possible?" "You are jesting, Cacambo. I can never believe it." "Dear master," replied Cacambo, "you are surprised at everything. Why should you think it so strange that in some countries there are monkeys which insinuate themselves into the good graces of the ladies? They are a fourth part human, as I am a fourth part Spaniard." "Alas!" replied Candide, "I remember to have heard Master Pangloss say that formerly such accidents used to happen, that these mixtures were productive of centaurs, fauns, and satyrs, and that many of the ancients had seen such monsters. But I looked upon the whole as fabulous." "You ought now to be convinced," said Cacambo, "that it is the truth, and you see what use is made of those creatures by persons that have not had a proper education. All I fear is that those ladies will play us some ugly trick." These sound reflections induced Candide to leave the meadow and to plunge into a wood. He supped there with Cacambo, and after cursing the Portuguese inquisitor, the governor of Buenos Ayres, and the baron, they fell asleep on moss. On awakening they felt that they could not move, for during the night the Oreillons, who inhabited that country, and to whom the ladies had denounced them, had bound them with cords made of the bark of trees. They were encompassed by 50 naked Oreillons, armed with bows and arrows, with clubs and flint hatchets. Some were making a large cauldron boil, others were preparing spits, and all cried, "A Jesuit! A Jesuit! We shall be revenged! We shall have excellent cheer! Let us eat the Jesuit! Let us eat him up!" "I told you, my dear master," cried Cacambo sadly, "that those two girls would play us some ugly trick." Candide, seeing the cauldron and the spits, cried, "We are certainly going to be either roasted or boiled. Ah, what would Master Pangloss say were he to see how pure nature is formed? Everything is right, may be, but I declare it is very hard to have lost Miss Cunegonde and to be put on a spit by Oreillons." Cacambo never lost his head. "Do not despair," said he to the disconsolate Candide. "I understand a little of the jargon of these people. I will speak to them." "Be sure," said Candide, "to represent to them how frightfully inhuman it is to cook men, and how very unchristian." "Gentlemen," said Cacambo, "you reckon you are to-day going to feast upon a Jesuit. It is all very well. Nothing is more unjust than thus to treat your enemies. Indeed, the law of nature teaches us to kill our neighbor, and such is the practice all over the world. If we do not accustom ourselves to eating them, it is because we have better fare. But you have not the same resources as we. Certainly it is much better to devour your enemies than to resign to the crows and rooks the fruits of your victory. But, gentlemen, surely you would not choose to eat your friends. You believe that you are going to spit a Jesuit, and he is your defender. It is the enemy of your enemies that you are going to roast. As for myself, I was born in your country. This gentleman is my master, and, far from being a Jesuit, he has just killed one whose spoils he wears. And thence comes your mistake. To convince you of the truth of what I say, take his habit and carry it to the first barrier of the Jesuit kingdom, and inform yourselves whether my master did not kill a Jesuit officer. It will not take you long, and you can always eat us if you find that I have lied to you. But I have told the truth. You are too well acquainted with the principles of public law, humanity, and justice not to pardon us." The Oreillons found this speech very reasonable. They deputed 2 of their principal people with all expedition to inquire into the truth of the matter. These executed their commission like men of sense, and soon returned with good news. The Oreillons untied their prisoners, showed them all sorts of civilities, offered them girls, gave them refreshment, and reconducted them to the confines of their territories, proclaiming with great joy, "He is no Jesuit! He is no Jesuit!" Candide could not help being surprised at the cause of his deliverance. "What people!" said he. "What men! What manners! If I had not been so lucky as to run Miss Cunegonde's brother through the body, I should have been devoured without redemption. But after all, pure nature is good, since these people, instead of feasting upon my flesh, have shown me 1,000 civilities, when then I was not a Jesuit." End chapter 16. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Candide by Voltaire, read by Ted DeLorme in Fort Mill, South Carolina, during January 2007. This is a LibriVox recording. Candide by Voltaire, Chapter 17. Arrival of Candide and his valet at El Dorado, and what they saw there. "You see," said Cacambo to Candide, as soon as they had reached the frontiers of the Oreillons, "that this hemisphere is not better than the others. Take my word for it. Let us go back to Europe by the shortest way." "How go back?" said Candide. "And where shall we go? To my own country? The Bulgarians and the Abares are slaying all. To Portugal. There I shall be burnt. And if we abide here, we are every moment in danger of being spitted. But how can I resolve to quit a part of the world where my dear Cunegonde resides?" "Let us turn towards Cayenne," said Cacambo. "There we shall find Frenchmen who wander all over the world. They may assist us. God will perhaps have pity on us." It was not easy to get to Cayenne. They knew vaguely in which direction to go, but rivers, precipices, robbers, savages obstructed them all the way. Their horses died of fatigue. Their provisions were consumed. They fed a whole month upon wild fruits, and found themselves at last near a little river, bordered with cocoa trees, which sustained their lives and their hopes. Cacambo, who was as good a counselor as the old woman, said to Candide, "We are able to hold out no longer. We have walked enough. I see an empty canoe near the riverside. Let us fill it with coconuts, throw ourselves into it, and go with the current. A river always leads to some inhabited spot. If we do not find pleasant things, we shall at least find new things." "With all my heart," said Candide. "Let us recommend ourselves to Providence." They rowed a few leagues between banks, in some places flowery, in others barren, in some parts smooth, in others rugged. The stream ever widened, and at length lost itself under an arch of frightful rocks, which reached to the sky. The two travelers had the courage to commit themselves to the current. The river, suddenly contracting at this place, whirled them along with a dreadful noise and rapidity. At the end of 24 hours they saw daylight again, but their canoe was dashed to pieces against the rocks. For a league they had to creep from rock to rock, until at length they discovered an extensive plain bounded by inaccessible mountains. The country was cultivated as much for pleasure as for necessity. On all sides the useful was also the beautiful. The roads were covered, or rather adorned, with carriages of a glittering form and substance, in which were men and women of surprising beauty, drawn by large red sheep, which surpassed in fleetness the finest coursers in Andalusia, Tetuan, and Mequinez. "Here, however, is a country," said Candide, "which is better than Westphalia." He stepped out with Cacambo towards the first village which he saw. Some children, dressed in tattered brocades, played at quoits on the outskirts. Our travelers from the other world amused themselves by looking on. The quoits were large round pieces, yellow, red, and green, which cast a singular luster. The travelers picked a few of them off the ground. This was of gold, that of emeralds, the other of rubies. The least of them would have been the greatest ornament on the Mogul's throne. "Without doubt," said Cacambo, "these children must be the king's sons that are playing at quoits." The village schoolmaster appeared at this moment and called them to school. "There," said Candide, "is the preceptor of the royal family." The little truants immediately quitted their game, leaving the quoits on the ground with all their other playthings. Candide gathered them up, ran to the master, and presented them to him in a most humble manner, giving him to understand by signs that their royal highnesses had forgotten their gold and jewels. The schoolmaster, smiling, flung them upon the ground. Then, looking at Candide with a good deal of surprise, went about his business. The travelers, however, took care to gather up the gold, the rubies, and the emeralds. "Where are we?" cried Candide. "The king's children in this country must be well brought up, since they are taught to despise gold and precious stones." Cacambo was as much surprised as Candide. At length they drew near the first house in the village. It was built like a European palace. A crowd of people pressed about the door, and there was still more in the house. They heard most agreeable music, and were aware of a delicious odor of cooking. Cacambo went up to the door and heard they were talking Peruvian. It was his mother tongue, for it is well known that Cacambo was born in Tucuman, in a village where no other language was spoken. "I will be your interpreter here," said he to Candide. "Let us go in. It is a public house." Immediately 2 waiters and 2 girls, dressed in cloth of gold, and their hair tied up with ribbons, invited them to sit down to table with the landlord. They served 4 dishes of soup, each garnished with 2 young parrots, a boiled condor which weighed 200 pounds, 2 roasted monkeys of excellent flavor, 300 hummingbirds in one dish, and 600 fly birds in another. Exquisite ragots, delicious pastries, the whole served up in dishes of a kind of rock crystal. The waiters and girls poured out several liqueurs drawn from the sugar cane. Most of the company were chapmen and wagoners, all extremely polite. They asked Cacambo a few questions with the greatest circumspection, and answered his in the most obliging manner. As soon as dinner was over, Cacambo believed, as well as Candide, that they might well pay their reckoning by laying down 2 of those large gold pieces which they had picked up. The landlord and landlady shouted with laughter and held their sides. When the fit was over, "Gentlemen," said the landlord, "it is plain you are strangers, and such guests we are not accustomed to see. Pardon us, therefore, for laughing when you offered us the pebbles from our highroads in payment of your reckoning. You doubtless have not the money of the country, but it is not necessary to have any money at all to dine in this house. All hostelries established for the convenience of commerce are paid by the government. You have fared but very indifferently, because this is a poor village, but everywhere else you will be received as you deserve." Cacambo explained this whole discourse with great astonishment to Candide, who was as greatly astonished to hear it. "What sort of a country then is this?" said they to one another. "A country unknown to all the rest of the world, and where nature is of a kind so different from ours. It is probably the country where all is well, for there absolutely must be one such place, and whatever Master Pangloss might say, I often found that things went very ill in Westphalia." End chapter 17. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Candide by Voltaire. Read by Ted DeLorme in Fort Mill, South Carolina during January 2007. This is a LibriVox recording. Candide by Voltaire, Chapter 18, What They Saw in the Country of El Dorado. Cacambo expressed his curiosity to the landlord, who made answer, "I am very ignorant, but not the worse on that account. However, we have in this neighborhood an old man, retired from court, who is the most learned and most communicative person in the kingdom." At once he took Cacambo to the old man. Candide acted now only a second character, and accompanied his valet. They entered a very plain house, for the door was only of silver, and the ceilings were only of gold, but wrought in so elegant a taste as to vie with the richest. The antechamber, indeed, was only encrusted with rubies and emeralds, but the order in which everything was arranged made amends for this great simplicity. The old man received the strangers on his sofa, which was stuffed with humming-birds' feathers, and ordered his servants to present them with liqueurs in diamond goblets, after which he satisfied their curiosity in the following terms: "I am now 172 years old, and I learnt of my late father, master of the horse to the king, the amazing revolutions of Peru, of which he had been an eye-witness. The kingdom we now inhabit is the ancient country of the Incas, who quitted it very imprudently to conquer another part of the world, and were at length destroyed by the Spaniards. More wise by far were the princes of their family, who remained in their native country, and they ordained, with the consent of the whole nation, that none of the inhabitants should ever be permitted to quit this little kingdom, and this has preserved our innocence and happiness. The Spaniards have had a confused notion of this country. They have called it El Dorado, and an Englishman, whose name was Sir Walter Raleigh, came very near it about 100 years ago. But being surrounded by inaccessible rocks and precipices, we have hitherto been sheltered from the rapaciousness of European nations, who have an inconceivable passion for the pebbles and dirt of our land, for the sake of which they would murder us to the last man." The conversation was long. It turned chiefly on their form of government, their manners, their women, their public entertainments, and the arts. At length Candide, having always had a taste for metaphysics, made Cacambo ask whether there was any religion in that country. The old man reddened a little. "How, then," said he, "can you doubt it? Do you take us for ungrateful wretches?" Cacambo humbly asked what was the religion in El Dorado. The old man reddened again. "Can there be two religions?" said he. "We have, I believe, the religion of all the world. We worship God night and morning." "Do you worship but one God?" said Cacambo, who still acted as interpreter in representing Candide's doubts. "Surely," said the old man, "there are not two, nor three, nor four. I must confess the people from your side of the world ask very extraordinary questions." Candide was not yet tired of interrogating the good old man. He wanted to know in what manner they prayed to God in El Dorado. "We do not pray to him," said the worthy sage. "We have nothing to ask of him. He has given us all we need, and we return him thanks without ceasing." Candide, having a curiosity to see the priests, asked where they were. The good old man smiled. "My friend," said he, "we are all priests. The king and all the heads of families sing solemn canticles of thanksgiving every morning, accompanied by 5,000 or 6,000 musicians." "What? Have you no monks who teach, who dispute, who govern, who cabal, and who burn people that are not of their opinion?" "We must be mad indeed if that were the case," said the old man. "Here we are all of one opinion, and we know not what you mean by monks." During this whole discourse Candide was in raptures, and he said to himself, This is vastly different from Westphalia and the baron's castle. Had our friend Pangloss seen El Dorado, he would no longer have said that the castle of Thunder Ten Tronckh was the finest upon earth. It is evident that one must travel." After this long conversation, the old man ordered a coach and 6 sheep to be got ready, and 12 of his domestics to conduct the travelers to court. "Excuse me," said he, "if my age deprives me of the honor of accompanying you. The king will receive you in a manner that cannot displease you, and no doubt you will make an allowance for the customs of the country if some things should not be to your liking." Candide and Cacambo got into the coach. The 6 sheep flew, and in less than 4 hours they reached the king's palace, situated at the extremity of the capital. The portal was 220 feet high and 100 wide, but words are wanting to express the materials of which it was built. It is plain such materials must have prodigious superiority over those pebbles and sand which we call gold and precious stones. 20 beautiful damsels of the king's guard received Candide and Cacambo as they alighted from the coach, conducted them to the bath, and dressed them in robes woven of the down of hummingbirds, after which the great crown officers of both sexes led them to the king's apartment, between 2 files of musicians, 1,000 on each side. When they drew near to the audience chamber, Cacambo asked one of the great officers in what way he should pay his obeisance to his majesty, whether they should throw themselves upon their knees or on their stomachs, whether they should put their hands upon their heads or behind their backs, whether they should lick the dust off the floor. In a word, what was the ceremony? "The custom," said the great officer, "is to embrace the king and to kiss him on each cheek." Candide and Cacambo threw themselves round his majesty's neck. He received them with all the goodness imaginable, and politely invited them to supper. While waiting, they were shown the city, and saw the public edifices raised as high as the clouds, the market-places ornamented with 1,000 columns, the fountains of spring water, those of rose water, those of liqueurs drawn from sugar-cane, incessantly flowing into the great squares, which were paved with a kind of precious stone which gave off a delicious fragrancy like that of cloves and cinnamon. Candide asked to see the court of justice, the parliament. They told him they had none, and that they were strangers to lawsuits. He asked if they had any prisons, and they answered no. But what surprised him most and gave him the greatest pleasure was the Palace of Sciences, where he saw a gallery 2,000 feet long, and filled with instruments employed in mathematics and physics. After rambling about the city the whole afternoon, and seeing but 1,000th part of it, they were reconducted to the royal palace, where Candide sat down to table with his majesty, his valet Cacambo, and several ladies. Never was there a better entertainment, and never was more wit shown at table than that which fell from his majesty. Cacambo explained the king's bon mots to Candide, and notwithstanding they were translated, they still appeared to be bon mots. Of all the things that surprised Candide, this was not the least. They spent a month in this hospitable place. Candide frequently said to Cacambo, "I own, my friend, once more that the castle where I was born is nothing in comparison with this. But after all, Miss Cunegonde is not here, and you have, without doubt, some mistress in Europe. If we abide here, we shall only be upon a footing with the rest. Whereas if we return to our old world, only with 12 sheep laden with the pebbles of El Dorado, we shall be richer than all the kings in Europe. We shall have no more inquisitors to fear, and we may easily recover Miss Cunegonde." This speech was agreeable to Cacambo. Mankind are so fond of roving, of making a figure in their own country, and of boasting of what they have seen in their travels, that the 2 happy ones resolved to be no longer so, but to ask his majesty's leave to quit the country. "You are foolish," said the king. I am sensible that my kingdom is but a small place, but when a person is comfortably settled in any part, he should abide there. I have not the right to detain strangers. It is a tyranny which neither our manners nor our laws permit. All men are free. Go when you wish, but the going will be very difficult. It is impossible to ascend that rapid river on which you came as by a miracle, and which runs under vaulted rocks. The mountains which surround my kingdom are 10,000 feet high, and as steep as walls. They are each over 10 leagues in breadth, and there is no other way to descend them than by precipices. However, since you absolutely wish to depart, I shall give orders to my engineers to construct a machine that will convey you very safely. When we have conducted you over the mountains, no one can accompany you further, for my subjects have made a vow never to quit the kingdom, and they are too wise to break it. Ask me besides anything that you please. We desire nothing of your majesty, said Candide, but a few sheep laden with provisions, pebbles, and the earth of this country. The king laughed. I cannot conceive, said he, what pleasure you Europeans find in our yellow clay, but take as much as you like, and great good may it do you. At once he gave directions that his engineers should construct a machine to hoist up these two extraordinary men out of the kingdom. 3,000 good mathematicians went to work. It was ready in 15 days, and did not cost more than 20 million sterling in the specie of that country. They placed Candide and Cacambo on the machine. There were 2 great red sheep, saddled and bridled to ride upon as soon as they were beyond the mountains, 20 pack sheep laden with provisions, 30 with presents of the curiosities of the country, and 50 with gold, diamonds, and precious stones. The king embraced the 2 wanderers very tenderly. Their departure, with the ingenious manner in which they and their sheep were hoisted over the mountains, was a splendid spectacle. The mathematicians took their leave after conveying them to a place of safety, and Candide had no other desire, no other aim, than to present his sheep to Miss Cunegonde. Now, said he, we are able to pay the governor of Buenos Aires if Miss Cunegonde can be ransomed. Let us journey towards Cayenne. Let us embark, and we will afterwards see what kingdom we shall be able to purchase. End chapter 18. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Candide by Voltaire, read by Ted DeLorme in Fort Mill, South Carolina, during January 2007.
Okay, so apparently, besides me being a little stunned, that went all right. I'm apparently streaming this on my craft channel, or on my regular channel instead of my craft channel, because I am smart. Oh well, I'll download and upload it again, and I forgot to change my banner, and oh my gosh. Oh well, what do you do? Thanks for coming by, I appreciate it. I hope you guys have an absolutely wonderful day, um, and I'll just see you later. I'm going to turn the heating pad back on and sit some more. And tomorrow, the weekend will be better. The weekend will be better. My back won't be so bad. Okay. I'll let you guys go. Love you and enjoy. Bye. Oops. Okay. Move.